Hi sophomores. Today I just want to quickly go over and briefly talk about the summative collage that's due for our novella of Mice and Men. Now I've already made a previous recording that explains this in great detail, so today I just want to focus on the components of the rubric that fit the excelling column. So I'm just assuming that all of my students want to get an A. So we're going to briefly look at this, and then we're going to look at the model that I've created. So I'm going to scroll down here, and you had the choice to choose either a single character, and you're going to talk about the social critiques that they represent, or you're going to choose a societal issue and talk about the characters that reinforce that. Now you guys have been and girls have been doing a great job with your web graphic organizers. You already have much of your work done for this summative. So I just want to focus on these questions. So if you're focusing on a single character, you're going to answer some of these questions. What is Steinbeck's message about your assigned character? What role did your character play in the story? How does Steinbeck use your character to make a statement about the harsh realities of life in the 1930s? And we've talked about some of that in class, as well as you've heard me talk about it in my annotation recordings. What is your character critiquing about society? Now, if you're focused on a single societal issue, these are the questions you're going to answer in the summative collage. What is Steinbeck's message about that societal norm? And an example here is racism. However, you know from our class discussions that there are so many social issues going on. And so it's almost as if you have a plethora of them to choose from. What role did each character contribute to that societal norm in the story? How does Steinbeck use the characters to make a statement about the harsh realities of life in the 1930s? And what are your characters critiquing about society? So those are the questions you're going to be answering on your summative collage. You're going to need to use significant quotes. You're going to be using images that portray the character, and you can do that symbolically as well. You're going to have some sort of depiction of your character in the center of your page of your creation along with that character's name. And you can use either Adobe Spark, Canva, or Google Slides. If you're an artist, by all means use the Sketchbook app, but if you're not an artist, please don't use it. I also want to point out, in something that I've said in my previous recording, that I'd like to see you push yourself and try something new. So don't use Google Slides just for the sake of using Google Slides. Push yourself and learn something about a new technology application. All right? So let's take a look. My goodness, I can't talk today. Let's take a look at our rubric, and we're just going to focus on that exceeding category. Okay, so let's just read it. I know we've went over this before, but let's just refresh our memories before we embark on actually starting to work on the process of creating that summative collage. Logical as well as connotative and figurative inferences are made about the character or social issue. Now, you'll recall that there's a handout in the module that goes through and for each chapter identifies all of the different idioms. So language that is used in one way, but if you think about it, it doesn't literally mean what it says. So for example, if I said, "Come on, don't beat around the bush," I don't literally mean not to beat around the bush. I mean, let's stick to the point. Let's get on topic here and say whatever you need to say. Right? So we're going to be looking at some connotative language in our novella. And if you watch the recordings that I've made, or you've been in class, we've talked about this a lot. Okay? So keep that in mind. Numerous or carefully selected specific evidence creates an insightful conclusion about the character's role as social criticism or the overall social critique the novel makes on the issue. Quotes are cited properly. So let's stop there a minute and talk about that. First off, you all did that Summative web graphic organizer check. So you have a good idea already of what quotes are going to work for your character or for your social issue, and you know whether they were cited correctly or not, because I let you know that, and you also know that you can go back to the module and look at the models that I have there for you. So again, I just want to reiterate, you have a lot of this work done already. The collage is creative, applying multiple dimensions of pictures, words, colors, textures, and other media to create the messaging. And the collage was submitted electronically and on time. So it's important to keep deadlines, and we just want to see that you're trying your very best. So step out of your comfort zone a bit and explore new ideas, explore different ways of doing things as you're making the summative collage. Now we're going to take a look at my model, and I'm going to briefly talk about it and look at the different components, and we'll compare them to the rubric. Now you'll remember back as we were looking at the rubric that you needed to have your character's name in the center. You'll see I have Dolphus Raymond. That's who I'm choosing for the novel To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. And this is my image, and I'm using symbolism here for my image of Dolphus Raymond. So I chose the image of the mockingbird for Dolphus Raymond because he is an innocent person in the story, as well as Tom Robinson, Scout, Jem, and Boo Radley. Now as I scroll down, you're going to see that I have text that goes along with my image. So here I said, the mockingbird poised on the barbed wire fence represents Dolphus Raymond, who precariously balances life choices during a time when opposing cultural norms and laws were dangerous. Even though he opposes racism, he cannot fully fly to one side of the fence. So here I'm representing the two sides that we see in Maycomb, right? Those that are very racist and those that are not. And he can't slide to one side of the fence or the other because his wings are clipped. But he sings about it to those who are still open to learn. And when I say he sings, we're talking about the bird here, but this is of course all symbolic. And we know that Dolphus Raymond has conversations with Scout and Dill. Okay, so that's why I chose to show that image. The next image is a picture of Dolphus Raymond from one of the movie adaptations. And you'll see the question here. What role did your character play in the story? That is one of the questions that we need to answer if you think back to the rubric. So I pose the question right there and I give my answer. The minor character of Dolphus Raymond in To Kill a Mockingbird ironically and significantly represents many social critiques that Harper Lee exposes in her book. She intentionally uses a minor character to expose social injustices. In fact, even though he is a man, Dolphus Raymond is a man of privilege, right? He has a long-standing family name, and we know that's really important in To Kill a Mockingbird. He's wealthy, and he's white. He still represents the marginalized individuals during this time, okay? And so there's this intentional juxtaposition of using this minor character. Those of you who have read this novel know that he's a minor character. In fact, sometimes students forget who he is. So I feel like Harper Lee intentionally chose this minor character who is still this white man who has some clout in terms of financial opportunities and a good background, long standing family name. But he's also rejected by the people of Maycomb, and that's a very powerful message. My social critiques, I have listed racism as a cultural norm, flawed justice system or institutionalized racism, and bans on interracial marriages. Now, if you'll recall, Dolphus Raymond lives with a black woman, and he has children, and in the novel, they're called mixed children. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay? Now, thinking about images, I've already talked about two images that I have included in my summative collage. I have the mockingbird in the very beginning, which is really all about symbolism. I have a picture of Dolphus Raymond that was taken from one of the film adaptations. And my third image is this bottle here. And below it, it says the true contents of the bottle are Coke. And the reason I wanted to use that image is because in the novel, everybody in the town of Macomb believes that Dolphus Raymond is an alcoholic. However, he's not. He hides behind the mask of alcoholism, and he does it intentionally. He's all right with people believing that about him. And he's okay with that because he realizes that the people in Macomb cannot fathom or understand why he chooses to be with a black woman. Racism divides people so deeply and is embedded in that culture so severely that they cannot understand this. But he still chooses to live with this black woman, even though during this time he cannot legally marry her. And looking down below, I have some supporting quotes, and you're going to need significant quotes. If you recall, in the module, I also have some models to show you how to quote. So this first one says supporting paraphrase. It's bolded. So I'm letting the person, all of you, or the teacher, in your case it'll be the teacher, I'm letting that audience member know that, okay, here's my supporting quote, and this is actually going to be a paraphrase. And that's you, as the writer, just putting it in your own words. However, you're still giving credit to the original author. And my supporting paraphrase states, Jem and Dill discuss what many folks in Macomb say about Dolphus Raymond. And you're going to notice a colon at the end, because this is a lead-in. I'm leading in to my paraphrase, and because it's a full sentence, I'm ending it with a colon. Okay, it's a full sentence lead-in. And we know who the speakers are in this paraphrase because I'm letting the audience know that Jem and Dill discuss. Okay, what many folks in Macomb say about Dolphus Raymond. Mr. Dolphus Raymond was supposed to marry a white woman by the last name of Spencer, but she ended up committing suicide after she found out he was having relations with a colored woman. Now he has all sorts of mixed children with her, but it's sad because they don't belong to any group. They are shunned from the black folks and the white folks. And again, this quote really does signify how severe and how deep that racist society was in Macomb. Now, if you'll look here, because this is a paraphrase, I put it in my words, there aren't going to be any quotation marks. But I am going to end with the author's last name, Lee, followed by the page number. And note that the period comes after the parenthesis. Okay, let's look at my next model here of a supporting quote. So this is a direct quote. And again, I'm starting out with a full sentence lead-in, identifying the speaker. I'm framing it, right? And we've talked about that. I'm identifying the speaker, and I'm letting the audience know who that speaker is talking to in that first sentence. Dolphus explains to Scout and Dill why he lets people believe he drinks. That's a full sentence, so I'm going to end it with a colon. I'm not going to end it with a comma. However, if I would have just said Dolphus explains and stopped right there, I could have used a comma. But in this case, it's a full sentence, so I need to use that colon. And now we're going to see the quotation mark here because it's a complete direct quote. I try to give them a reason, you see. It helps folks if they can latch on to a reason. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to stop here and I'll come back with a part 2.